Hello, welcome back. So today I just want to take a minute to talk about a novel I read about 3 weeks ago. I've been putting off making this video for quite some time, and this is Arthur Hailey's Airport. So I really enjoyed reading this book. This was a really big blockbuster hit when it came out in 1968. I'm not sure if there was ever a movie based specifically on this book, but it very much fed into a very contemporary interest in the jet age, in jet planes and airline pilots and that sort of thing. And so this is a really well-researched novel in which Arthur Hailey uses a lot of different characters to tell us all about how these airports work. So this is centered on an airport in Illinois. It's an international airport. It has 2 runways, but it's much more than that. And Arthur Hailey really tried to show us everything that was going on at this airport and how complex of an operation this was by centering the novel around the character Mel Bakersfeld, who is the manager of this airport. And so he oversees everything. There is a hotel, there are apartments for some of the pilots and that sort of thing, just for them to stay in between flights. There are lots of restaurants. There are lots of little businesses in this airport, including, I believe there's a funeral home even, which seems kind of odd, but hey, I guess wherever business is, you go to the business, right? And Mel was a rising star in the airport airline business. So he had all these different ideas. He was on the fast track to being the head of the FAA. He had become like personal friends with President Kennedy and had often gone to the White House. He married a failed B-movie actress, and his life was really on the up and up, but now it's really gone downhill in the wake of the assassination of President Kennedy. He lost out on being the head of the FAA when Lyndon Johnson came in, knocking things over here. And his wife has become a socialite. All she wants to do is climb the social ladder and wind up in the social register in the newspaper, I suppose. And so their marriage is completely on the rocks. Mel is having a bit of an emotional affair with a woman named Tanya, who runs one of the counters for one of the airlines at the airport, and so she oversees all the business of making reservations and that sort of thing. And we enter this story right in the middle of a 3-day snowstorm, a huge snowstorm that has shut down pretty much every other airport in the Midwest and on the East Coast. And we are thrust into this issue where a plane has landed and skidded off the runway, and now it is blocking the runway. So their main runway is out of action. And this entire novel takes place over one single night. And everyone is getting together to try to move this airplane off, but there are all these other things going on at the same time. What with the snowstorm and everything like that, it's proving to be a very difficult task. But the main man who can get this airplane out of being stuck and get it out of the way, he lives about an hour away from the airport. And he has done this very deliberately so that they won't be calling him in all the time, because he's just like the best troubleshooter anyone could ever imagine. Like if there's a problem, he can fix it, whether it's with an airplane engine or with moving an airplane or anything like that. His name is Joe Petroni, and he is basically like the most stereotypical World War II airplane crew chief you could imagine, right? Like he is stout, he's short, he's good at all that sort of stuff. He's always smoking a cigar. So I kept thinking of General Curtis LeMay in particular every time that Joe Petroni would come up. They seem to be very similar. And he is on his way to the airport, but he can't get to the airport because some trucks have overturned and blocked the one road basically that he needs to get to the airport. So he is trying to troubleshoot getting the police and these tow truck drivers and everything to move these airplanes, or not these airplanes, but these trailers, these truck trailers that have blocked the road. And they basically just start listening to him, but it takes him a long time. We also have Mel's brother-in-law, who is a really good pilot, but an awful person, like just a terrible narcissist, complete egotist, a martinet, and he wants everything done his way. He thinks everything that he does is right. And he's really angry with Mel because he believes that the airports should not be selling flight insurance because it speaks badly of the pilots, and it also gives uh, bad people an incentive to blow up these airplanes to cash in on this airline insurance. It's not just that though. Vernon, he looks at Mel as kind of a loser, like a guy who was going places. He used to be a pilot. Mel used to be a pilot, and he was in the Korean War. But he got shot down, and his leg was injured very severely because his plane was sinking, and he had to cut through some wires and stuff to get out of the plane, and he cut several of his tendons and that sort of thing. And so Vernon really looks down his nose at Mel. But Vernon is very far from being a perfect individual. In fact, throughout this book, we learn that he has made a sport basically of knocking up stewardesses and then getting them to either sign away their babies or have abortions. And he has just done this with another stewardess. And he spends almost the entirety of this book trying to figure out how he's going to get her to have an abortion. So, although I will say that one of the most interesting things about this book is that none of the characters are either all good or all bad. They have very complex personalities, and we learn quite a bit about them throughout these books, about why they are the way they are, and that sort of thing. We also have Mel's brother, Keith, who has recently been transferred to this airport because it was thought that maybe if he was around his family, it would be a good thing because he works for the air traffic control up in the tower, and he directs the planes in the air and landing on the ground and taking off and that sort of thing. But recently something very, very bad has happened to him. He suffered a severe shock. It was a big tragedy. He was part of it. It was sort of his responsibility. And he is just completely broken over this, and everybody knows it. And they think that he is on the edge of having a complete nervous breakdown, basically, and that he's going to lose his job. But because this is such a high-pressure job, he could make a mistake that will get a lot of people killed. And so Mel has been fighting to keep his airport open all throughout this snowstorm. He has been doing everything in his power to marshal his forces and to keep these runways clean and clear of snow and ice, to keep the planes coming in and out. Now that this plane is across the runway and can't be moved, he is having to use the second runway. And so that is where a whole nother facet of this book comes in, where the people who, there were some real estate agents who sold a big chunk of land to all these people, and they built their houses right under this runway. So they have these huge jets coming in, taking it off and landing right over their houses all the time, constantly. And you want to feel, I wanted to feel contempt for them, basically, because in the beginning you sort of feel like, oh, well, they moved in, they knew what was there. I mean, they knew the airport was there, they knew what was going to happen, and now they're complaining about it all the time and trying to get this airport shut down. Really, it's on them, right? But we learned that some real estate agents had sold this land and really taken advantage of them and not told them everything about it. And so you start to feel a little bit of compassion for them. But they go and hire this really sleazy lawyer who will take on any case and charge them an outrageous cut. And he decides to have all these people in this neighborhood go to the airport in the middle of the snowstorm where Mel is having all this tension, all these troubles, and to stage a protest for the TV cameras. And on top of all of that, we also have a guy named Dio. His name is Dio Guerrero, and he lives with his wife Inez in this little ramshackle apartment. And we get Dio's backstory, where he was a really successful contractor, and he made a lot of money. They lived in a big house. They had a very comfortable life. But everything he started to do started to fail, and he started losing money left and right. Every business venture he tried fell apart, and they are in massive debt, and this is all they can afford, and he can't get a job at this point. So he has recently had a fight with his wife, and he hit her. And he's never done this before. They've been married for 15 years or so, maybe longer. And this has just broken him. It's like completely broken him. And their kids are living with his wife's sister, and he just feels like there's no way to get himself out of this hole. And so he decides that he is going to take out a huge life insurance policy on himself. He's going to put a bomb in his bag, and he's going to fly on this international flight from this airport in Illinois to, I want to say, Rome, or very near Rome. And it just so happens that Vernon is going to be the pilot of that flight, and the stewardess he's in this illicit relationship with is going to be on that flight also. And so we have this whole huge thing brewing, right? This huge disaster brewing. And I was just completely swept away by this book. I just loved this. I went into this thinking it was going to be like a gaudy soap opera, and that the characters were going to be really over the top, absurd, and ridiculous, and that was not the case at all. I think that the most absurd character in this book is probably Mel's wife, Cindy, where everything in her mind is just about climbing the social ladder, right? And she has all these daydreams of like hanging out with Jackie Kennedy or Jacqueline Onassis, I suppose, at this point. Just everything she does is scheming and calculating, and she's having an affair, and she has another affair in this book which becomes part of the plot. And I just thought this was great. I really enjoyed this. There's so much tension in this book, and it was really interesting to see how this airport works. It's got, like I said, a hotel, it's got apartments, it's got all these different stores and restaurants. It has its own roadwork crew. It has this huge organization getting all these bags to these different planes and their own police force and all this different stuff. It was interesting to see all these ideas that Mel had about how to go into the future, and some of the ideas that were brewing at the time this was written about airplanes of the future and that sort of thing. Supersonic airplanes were just coming around, and airplanes were getting bigger and bigger. And so Mel has all these ideas about like huge supersonic airplanes. And it was just interesting to see how these people doing their jobs really very well, despite all these personal problems that they have, despite all these interpersonal problems they have with each other. I just thought it was great. I really liked this, and Arthur Hailey did a lot of research, and it really shows. And it never feels like he's giving us info dumps. It feels like he's giving us very pertinent information that we need to see this whole story thoroughly. And I just thought it was great. And I don't know if I'll ever read anything else by Arthur Hailey. I suppose that I will, but I feel like it would be very hard to top this book right here. I just feel like this would probably be Arthur Hailey's best book. I may be wrong about that. I'll definitely give some other ones a try if I ever come across them, and I do see them rather frequently. So I just wanted to take a minute and talk about Airport and sort of get it out to people and say, hey, this is a good book and you should read this. If you're into that sort of thing, there's a lot of drama, but it's believable drama. It's very believable drama. Although this is the pre-9/11 world, so people are still smoking on airplanes, for instance. And one of the characters in this that I forgot to mention was a little old lady. And for fun and adventure, she has a hobby of sneaking onto these airplanes and flying all across the country. And she also just happens to sneak onto this international flight with Vernon and with Dio, the bomber. And it's a really interesting book, but it is very much from 1968. Although I really felt like Arthur Hailey had some really forward-thinking ideas for what this was. And yeah, just pick it up and check it out, read it. I forgot to show you. There's Arthur Hailey and his family on the back there. Anyway, I want to thank you for joining me today, and I hope you will pick up Airport and read it, and I'll see you next time.